Hi, this is Graphically Alex coming at you with all things fat related. If that's something that interests you, please subscribe. I'd love to have you. So today we're going to continue the Virgie Tovar podcast. I wanted to just say some things up front. So I'm going to be posting a video on Thursday, the day after Christmas. I have something planned that I've been wanting to do for a while, so I'm going to go ahead and just post it that day. It's a little bit more activistic. It is weight loss related, and I think it's important to talk about, but it's less like, about fat acceptance TikTok or, it's not really like that. So I'm going to go ahead and post that Thursday, and then I might do a health update about this winter solstice that just passed today. It's, I'm filming this the 21st, although it is after midnight. So I'm in my Midnight's era again. It's, just kidding. I'm not, but it's Midnight's era coded to be filming after midnight. So I am kind of thinking about that and reflecting. I am swelling very dramatically again, similar to last year. But I wonder what will happen in January, and I'm nervous about it in general because I don't know what to expect. I have never been this far in my health journey, and being past the winter solstice and all that stuff and going into January, I should be able to lose again. I was able to last year, or this year, basically. Gosh, we're getting to that funky time of the year where it's like last year, this year, last year. January 2024, I was able to lose, but I was coming down off of massive bloating throughout the whole month, so I don't know. But the point is, I think I am going to do daily January because I feel like maybe we need each other. Maybe I need your guys' support, and I need that kind of regimented vibe throughout January to keep me going. And maybe you guys need me too to help you keep going. The only thing I will say in terms of January for weight loss, as from an advice standpoint, is that January is a really good time to continue momentum. It's not a good time to start something new. I've said that a lot, especially if you're super morbidly obese. If you are, less so on the spectrum, you could probably lose weight easier. Like, it's still going to be really hard. I think February is a really tough time for a lot of people. They tend to drop off. But if you can hold on through February and March, you'll probably go through most of the year. If that's something you want to do, just be aware of that. I've noticed those willpower moments in those months. They tend to be hard for a lot of people, February and March. But in terms of me, I've done it before. I'm not worried about it, but I don't know how it's going to affect me. Everything changes. Like, the thinner I get, the whole thing shifts. So we'll see. But Obracity lives on. I'm still obese. I'm probably still going to be obese for a while. So although bra autumn is over, bra era is not done. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and continue with this podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening to my little news, my little updates. But let's go ahead and get started.
Was, I think, what hit me the most about that scene. There's just this constant state of being othered that I think your book hit on such a place of, we just talked about nostalgia, but like the thing that we craved so much as a kid of feeling included and part of something.
Oh, lastly, I want to say Merry Christmas. I forgot. Merry Christmas.
Something was, I think, what hit me the most about that scene. And that story, and it resonated so hard with me.
But
and
in
it
that
did
moment,
years ago too.
We all have done this, right? The three of us anyway. You see, okay, that actually looks like joy, and I want that. Mm-hmm. And then you have to start a journey. You don't go from where you were to that woman in the bathing suit, right? Mm-hmm. And this is the part that we're talking about, and it doesn't stop. It is a never-ending journey, right? And so, what gave you the strength? Like, what was that process for our listeners, thinking maybe they're not quite there yet, or maybe they understand that's why they're listening, but what do you
I was thinking about that today, actually. I was watching somebody's video. I can't remember whose, I was watching somebody's video and somebody was talking about being in a bathing suit and like they're like, I'm fat, but I'm gonna wear the bathing suit anyways because I don't care what anybody else thinks, or whatever, that kind of attitude. And I was thinking about it myself, and I was like, I don't know, like I wouldn't be comfortable being shirtless. I'm like, and I'm not going to, but I was just like, I don't know. And so I kind of reflected on that, and I'm like, is there some problem with it? Is there not? Or whatever. Like I kind of was thinking about it because I feel like a lot of fat acceptance, they really make that a huge thing where it's like if you're not able to wear a bathing suit or like, like a more revealing bathing suit, then you're like not on their level, or like it's like this big status thing. It's almost like the fat acceptance, pseudo-religious baptism ceremony, like because of the way they talk about it, it's very, it's really a lot. And I don't know, like I don't know if I'll be there one day. I will let you guys know, but I'm not there now. I mean, right now I am fucking cold, and I'm wearing something that would really upset Samira. This isn't technically an oversized jacket, even though I feel so bloated. I feel like it's not oversized anymore because I'm so swollen. And I have been eating a lot, to be honest. So I'm feeling like, I don't even know. You guys. It's crazy. So I am still going to the gym, though, which is also crazy. I have to. Yeah, I'm going to have to do a health update because I'm going to have to talk about my winter strategy and all this stuff. Sorry, I'm just thinking out loud. But yeah, I guess I'll let you know if I ever do the fat acceptance baptism ceremony and I like go into the pool without a shirt on or whatever, I'll let you guys know, but I'm not there. But me wearing this oversized, every time I put on like my 3X jackets, even like my Georgie sweater or jumper, my Georgie jumper, it's a 3X and it's technically oversized. And I always think of Samira and how mad she would be that I'm wearing it. Even Eric has made fun of me on the phone one time. He was like, okay, he's like, you're really gonna piss off Samira. I'm like, I know, I really am. Because this is oversized, babes. It's oversized. It will certainly be oversized back on the deficit and de-bloating. Then it's very much oversized. But right now it's like mildly. Anyways. No bathing suit for me. No shirtless pool moment for me. It ain't happening. So, anyways.
Do first.
Oh my God. I mean, I think that's really like personal. On the one hand, like I don't know that there isn't a one size fits all model for that. But I think for me, it was, I will say like so I have, like I mentioned, I have like childhood trauma. So part of my childhood trauma is that I'm a black and white thinker. So I'm someone who like can look at a whole body of facts, for example. And then if there's one.
It's giving hypo haze. Warned y'all. For those of you guys who don't know, I have talked about the hypothyroid haze a lot on my channel, and one of the symptoms of it is black and white thinking. So she literally, all right, girl. I believe her about her trauma, but I do think could have to do with obesity too. She wouldn't want to hear that though. She wouldn't want to. Just saying.
That kind of calls all the other facts into question, I'll just throw them all out. I kind of want to be clear that like some of this is like the rigidity of a society that told me you will never have that. No fat person has that. No fat person has that joy. No fat person has that desire. No fat person gets to have that experience of femininity that is like bombastic and dramatic and show-stopping. No fat person gets to have like their lover chasing behind them with a parasol so that they won't get a sunburn because their body isn't precious enough for that.
Absolutely.
So now, right, like, right, I had this like monolithic idea of what it meant to be fat. And then I'm going to a space where there's dozens of people who are literally, they're all the data points.
Absolutely.
That say, actually, if I'm like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there's like 35, 40, 50 people here, fat people here.
And they're all doing it, honey.
Doing that exact thing.
Yeah.
So I think there was sort of like, I think it was, and specifically kind of that moment where I see like this very bombastic feminine person who's like wearing a vintage bikini and has cat eye sunglasses and is like strutting out, and their lover is holding a parasol over their head. I mean, obviously this is like so cinematic and amazing, but I think I was like in that moment realizing that it wasn't acceptance that I craved, it was that. And kind of like to almost be leveled up by another person. Like, no, I don't want to just have access to like, you know, the Ann Taylor oeuvre. I don't want to just have access to employment, just have access to equal wages and things that fat people are denied. I want that. And kind of like, I think for me, it's like the fact that there was some.
Yeah, I don't. It's so hard to parse apart. Like, I'm going to just say it. I mean, again, I'm not a doctor or whatever, but I do feel like Virgie is very hypothyroid with some of how she's thinking, because it's that also you stratify everything when you're in that mindset. It's so crazy. But you do. Like, everything is on a ranking system, and you overcategorize, and there's just a lot of stuff that you do when you're in that kind of thing. And then she combines it. She's like a nice example of a marriage between the hypohaze and toxic ritualistic, because then upon that hypohaze hardwire in her brain where she's always stratifying, she's also has the obsession with body, which is the toxic ritualistic. You have to remember, for somebody like Virgie, and again, honestly, for me, when you have the combination of the two, so like you have a deep physical issue like hypothyroidism that's very severe, and likely she probably has utilization issues in her body, right? Hypothyroidism is not well understood. I probably should do a video just about it in general, but it's not very well understood, and there's a lot of different causes to it. But regardless, being super morbidly obese it can cause hypothyroidism through a process of elevated estrogen due to the fat on your body. And estrogen opposes thyroid hormone. So you can get hypothyroid symptoms and issues just being super morbidly obese, especially if you have a fatty liver, because your liver, as a fatty liver, cannot get rid of the excess estrogen well enough. So you can't be super morbidly obese and be healthy. I'm sorry. There are so many things that it causes. That is one of them. And I think she's been that size for such a long time that the hypothyroidism is started to affect her brain. And that's where I'm talking about these brain changes that I also experienced. So I can point it out. It takes one to know one, you know? And I also experienced them going away. And it was like, what the hell? Like, I don't have that rigidity anymore. What the fuck? You know? I'm not constantly stratifying everything anymore. I'm not constantly looking at everything black and white anymore. Who am I now? You know? And combining that with no longer having the toxic ritualistic, the feeling of losing my religion, I was a hot ass mess this year. Mentally, it was a lot. And even late last year, it was a lot. So again, I always try to like tell people it is a big ask. Like, somebody who's been super morbidly obese for many, many years of their life, it is a big ask for them to lose the weight. But it still needs to be asked. It just needs to be understood that it's often a years-long process. And don't rush somebody through it. If they accept that they need to lose the weight, if they start losing the weight, even if they were losing like 20 pounds a year, that's still progress, and they're still going to get there. Because most people don't gain the weight that fast. So most people, they gain the weight like 10 pounds a year. So I wouldn't rush somebody if they're trying. And most people, once you try and once you start and you kind of get into that mode and you get out of the toxic ritualistic, you address your hormone issues, there's like a whole process when you're super morbidly obese. You do the Eros tour. I call it the Eros tour. You have to do a whole ass Eros tour to get out of super morbid obesity. But when you're doing the tour and you're on tour, I think that that person shouldn't be rushed because it can take a long time, you know, and always prevent it. If you are not super morbidly obese, do not become it. It is a lot harder to lose weight once you're in that state, especially sustainably. But as I always say, you can get out, and once you do, it gets easier. And I will tell you, because when I was super morbidly obese, all I ever heard was you lose the weight and it just gets harder and harder and harder as you lose it. And it was already such a Herculean task being super morbidly obese. And I'm here to tell you, no. Get out of super morbid obesity. Be out of it for 3 or 4 months, and it will be easier. You have to stay out of it. You can't like dip a toe out of it and then gain the weight. You can't do all that. So you can't be in an E followed by the letter D. You can't have that psychological BS going on because it has to not matter that you've lost weight. It has to be okay that you lost weight. If you're like, oh my gosh, everything about me, who I am, if you're doing all that and that kind of like toxic ritualistic mindsets, like that spiraling thoughts go through your head, you will sabotage it if you have that. So you can't. I will always tell people, if you have that E followed by the letter D, you will not be successful with weight loss. You have to get rid of it. So that's always going to be your first step, and it was my first step. The hormone stuff and all that, it was the second step, because I had to break the rules of my toxic ritualistic mindset. And it's likely true for you as well, because the psychological issues of that TRM, those psychological issues, they can go on for no reason or any reason at all. Like, if you don't have control over it, you're never going to get control over your weight, period. So, but yeah, if you get real deep in the hypo, like Virgie is as well, it causes a massive rigidity in the person's brain. And so it can be really difficult. And as I've said, I said it in my last video about Virgie, she is so in it. She's so in it. I don't really have any faith in her unless she has a massive health collapse, which I don't want that to happen. But I'm just saying, based on what I know about this, based on what I've experienced, based on the fact it took me that to change, but I just, she's really in it, you know? Yeah, because her sitting there being like, I don't want to just have a job with equal wages or whatever. She's like, I want to have this. So it's like, it's this like kind of underlying competitiveness, but it's a stratification. So everything is ranked. Everything is, you know, first, second, third, fourth place. You know, when you get out of the hypo haze, you start to realize that not everything is even close to being a competition, or most people are not judging you. You know, you get out of that kind of black and white paranoia, like, feeling. It just ends, you know? So it's really crazy to have experienced that shift, but it all has to do with your body. Essentially, when you are hypothyroid and you're so deeply hypothyroid, you're running completely, like, you run on adrenaline, you run on stress hormones and survivalism. And so I think anyways, when the brain is in a constant state of survival, it changes the way your brain thinks. And when you get out of it, like you fix the hormonal issues, then your brain also heals and you become less rigid. You become less black and white. And how I try to explain it, because it is hard to explain, but hypohaze behavior is like not cleaning your house because you can't clean it perfectly. That's a perfect example. So if you are like in a messy home and you think, gosh, like I can't handle cleaning this because I can't do the entire house this whole day, this whole time at once. That is kind of like hypohaze behavior. It's that kind of black and white thinking, whereas a non-hazy way of looking at it would be, oh, I can just clear off this counter today, or I can do what I can do today, and I'll just continue tomorrow, and I'll do what I can do tomorrow. And you just kind of bit by bit, you get the house clean, and then it's clean. And then you will even just naturally do that as the days go on, because you're just you're not in a haze, you're seeing how things are. And that's like the best example I have, because it's not necessarily E followed by the letter D, because that's more physical. But you see how complicated it is? It's very hard to explain to people sometimes, because people don't talk about this in terms of obesity. They don't talk about it in terms of, especially super morbidly obese, which these issues can become so drastic. It literally changes your personality. So, yeah. I know it's kind of complicated, but I'm just trying to explain it. I'll probably try to do a better job in January. Okay.
Someone alive and doing it and right in front of me gave me kind of the strength to say, you know, I'm done. And I kind of want to say also, at that time, we were in a different time culturally when I had that moment. It was like 2010. And at that time, it was, the news had not broken yet that we could all stop dieting.
Right.
Nobody knew that. Nobody knew. And so if you can imagine going from a culture where, like, literally I had a very robust political life, and I've been an activist since I was 18 years old. So, like, I mean, I've been a critical thinker, activist, political person, and feminist since I was like 20 years old, and it never occurred to me that I could stop dieting as a fat person. I thought, you're fat, you have to diet, everybody diets, that's how it works. And then at this conference, it was like I was being introduced to, I was asked the question, did you know you don't have to diet? Which I did not know that I didn't have to diet. That was like a huge, like, genie out of the bottle moment. And then to see this model of the femininity that I've always desired and craved, was like this 1-2 punch of like, whatever I have to do to adopt, to live like this, I will do it. And so I think there is kind of there's like, I guess what I'm saying, I guess the wrap up is like, I think there is, for me, there was like this leap of faith, right? Because I think what was on the other side wasn't worth fighting for.
Right.
For me. Like, the math just didn't add up. I was like, I'm miserable. I'm not getting the outcomes I want.
Absolutely.
I hate myself. I'm afraid of food. Like, it's just like, you know, I was like, the calculations just aren't there. And so I think, that was like the leap of faith, and just kind of like being like, I'm going to do whatever I have to do to integrate this.
I think, gosh, like, she's really jumping from, I told you, she's a perfect marriage of the two, in my opinion. So that was very toxic ritualistic. So we already had some of the hypohaze. Now we're getting to TRM, toxic ritualistic mindset. So toxic ritualistic mindset that she showed there is, it's the whole diets don't work. And it's the whole, like, she's kind of gaslighting herself into thinking she's recovered when she hasn't. Because when you are recovered on the psychological side, the idea of counting calories or reducing food intake to get to an appropriate weight is just a very boring, normal fact. It's like, okay, I'll have to take certain steps down the ladder. I'll have to probably do it this time and then stop for a while and then do it here again. You know, like you can strategize around it. You can figure it out. But just understanding that knowledge of like, that's the facts. Caloric realism. So calories matter. And the calories that we're eating at the activity level we have, you know, that will determine our size, especially if we consider, yes, the genetics of our sex, age, and height, which that's the genetics that matter in terms of weight, then sure, then you figure it out what you need to do to get to that appropriate weight from that framework and from that point. But remember, your appetite will be reflective of your age, sex, and height as well, and activity level. A normal functioning body will not have an appetite drastically higher than the calories required to run your body. A normal functioning body will always, for the most part, with some rare exceptions, will want you to maintain, because that's the easiest state for your body, is maintaining. So oftentimes, if you have a hormonal problem, your body is thinking that you're maintaining, but you're gaining. And even if it can be slow over a very long period of time, that's more typically a hormonal weight gain. If it's very fast and around certain events in your life, or if it has to do with dieting and then getting off of it, and then you're losing a lot of weight, then gaining a lot back, that's toxic ritualistic. That is B followed by the letter E followed by the letter D. That's psychological. Because you're not, you know, with some rare exceptions, like I said, I'm hypo. I can swell like crazy in the winter solstice, but it comes back off. You know, obviously, if you're a woman, you're going to have certain things where your weight can fluctuate, things that have to do a lot of times with reproductive health. So things like your period, things like pregnancy or postpartum, things like menopause, right? That can all affect your weight as well. So you just have to be aware of like what is going on, you know, and just be okay, basically. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't. Like, you just kind of monitor everything as you normally would. And you don't let it get to your head, you know. And if you have a hormonal issue on top of it, then you also try to keep that reality real too. And you think, okay, well, I have this issue here, you know, like I have PCOS, this such and such will happen, or I have hypothyroidism, I know I'm affected by the time of year, right? You think about it that way, and you just have to like, you have to keep real, because when you have interactions where you have the E followed by the letter D, or you have that past and you have physical issues, or even something basic like your period, it can mess with your head. And what I don't ever want you to do is, well, first of all, you need to get out of toxic ritualistic completely. Like, you need to throw that in the trash. I've said it, like, it needs to go. You got to burn it to the ground. Like, you have to fight those mindsets. They're sticky. They don't just leave. Like, you have to, like, make fun of them, say they're stupid, say it's a big joke, right? Like, you have to be kind of harsh with those chain email thoughts, and that kind of like, if you scroll past this TikTok, you'll have bad luck for 7 years. That's the level of these mindsets in your brain. They're like superstitions. So you have to be harsh with it and fight them, but don't ever let like your period make you feel like you're not losing weight, or diets don't work, or whatever. A deficit doesn't work because I have my period. That's a toxic mindset. Like, always stay grounded in physical reality, and always try to de-emotionalize the experience as much as possible. Like I said, Don't feel bad if weight loss is emotional for you, but don't ever play up the emotion. And as emotional people, which I am an emotional person, as you can tell, sometimes as emotional people, we build up emotions around things. And while that can be cute, if you're building up emotions like around a crush or, something like that, it's not cute when you're doing it around weight loss or body image. That is not a good thing to do. And that will absolutely sabotage your progress. And that is toxic ritualistic. Do not obsess over that. So you can see with her there, she could not accept that. She couldn't accept those things. And I'd be really wondering what kind of diet she was doing. I can almost guarantee it was probably awful. They're probably horrific diets that are not realistic at all. The type of things that are destined for failure, put it to you that way. That's my supposition. That's my guess.
Yeah. Joy. And I think you hit on it really well. And until I read your book the first time, which was right when I was starting my boudoir world. So it was 17, 18, I believe, because I saw your TED Talk, realized that you had a book, read the book, and then just re-listened to it via audio. And it brought back everything that touched on it the first time. And I'm 5'11". I've been big my whole life. And the way that you talk about how we play as children in the size body that we have, I think is really important. And if you've not read the book, I want you to touch on this for people, because as children, we're taught size is related to gender. Like a larger body automatically plays the husband, like in this weird male-female world that we live in, right?
Assumptively, like there's no discussion.
There was no discussion.
Okay, I don't think that that's weird. I think it's play pretend, it's role playing, it's trying to understand the world. It's not weird though. It's actually extremely common. Let's just throw that out. Now, as far as I do remember Virgie, I think in her Ulta interview, she did talk about the kind of sadness she felt over always having to be the guy, when she was doing play pretend with her friends and stuff. I totally can, trust me, I have plenty of gender non-conforming stuff going on with myself. More than you could ever even know. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm sure you could understand. But what needs to be understood, that's all totally separate. And while that may be totally valid and you can totally have feelings about that, yes, it has nothing to do with weight. Okay? Just putting that out there. In the grand scheme, weight is not really related to that. Okay. I hope that's clear.
Never be the pretty wife at home. I was always the backstage coordinator or the husband or the male presenting role. And I didn't know that I needed the permission from someone like you to fit the role of I am feminine. I can have a masculine and feminine side, and they can be equal parts. And I didn't know I needed permission for that. And I think that...
Well, and I think, too, they don't have to be equal parts either. I definitely have a masculine side, but I am majorly feminine. Very much so. I'm not 100% feminine, but I'm really high up there. And I'm not ashamed of that or whatever. I've had my issues with it growing up and whatever. But honestly, my view on this, call it brat or whatever, just be true to who you are. That's all. That's all. If you're like half and half, like I have a friend, I'm going to shout out to Goblin. Goblin, she is very like definitely gender nonconforming as well. I'll put it to you that way. She would not be offended at all because we've talked about this. I even sometimes I wonder if I might even do a video with her at some point because she's lost weight too, but I want to be thinner. And I want to talk about the interaction of weight and non-gender conformity because it is interesting. But it really is crazy. But what I will say is that's who she is. This is who I am. You know, and if you had to play pretend and you're always the boy or whatever, well, guess what? We're adults now. We can be who we are. Let it go. You know? And just be who you are. Like you don't have to be 50%. You don't have to be 100%. You can be whatever. Just be you, you know? That's because I just don't believe in playing a role your whole life. Like, I mean, like in the sense of like an acting thing. Like, I do believe in some aspect of gender roles within a relationship, but obviously they're chosen, right? And it's just kind of like guidance for you as so that you know what to do, you know? It's kind of like a role in a play, like you know where you stand on stage, right? It's that kind of thing, but it doesn't have to be like the deepest thing in the world or this oppressive thing or whatever. You can always shift the script a little bit, in my opinion, you know, and adjust what's necessary for your relationship. But as far as like life and like attracting somebody and all these different things, like you have to just be who you are because it's like, and who you genuinely are, you know, like don't play up one side or the other because it's stressful. It really is. But I would just say, you know, I've definitely a lot this year, and even within my weight loss, it has helped me to embrace my femininity more than I ever have in my life. And I think for me personally, this is kind of where this is coming up, but whatever, let's talk about it, right? For me in my life, I've a lot of times feared my femininity because it represents vulnerability. It's tough. You know, it's kind of like tough even on a spiritual level. And obviously I'm not a woman, so I don't have that same physical vulnerability, but I still feel a lot of the, especially psychological vulnerability and emotional vulnerability of femininity. So it's tough. It's hard. But it's also been very freeing, you know. So I probably will talk about that at some point next year. I do think it's important because I do think our relationship to gender is affected by obesity. I really do. I think it's because your hormones are so all over the place. But again, don't think that you're guaranteed to be more gender conforming with weight loss, because I've actually become more feminine since I've lost weight, you know? So it's like, I think you just become more of who you are as you lose the weight and get healthier. You just become who you are, or who you always were, you know? So anyways, we'll move on from that conversation. Let's go ahead and hear what they have to say about this.
To me, was the biggest takeaway from your entire book, and why when I reread it, I just was like, I have to remind myself that it's okay to have both masculine and presenting bits of me, but to give yourself permission to have both, I think is really beautiful. And
Yeah, everybody pretty much has both. Like I said, and I think most people lean one way or the other, with the exception of Goblin. Shout out to Goblin again. But for my astrological girly pops, Goblin is a Libra with a Libra rising. Super balanced, okay? We're not all Libras with Libra risings, okay? Let's be real. But you don't have to force yourself to be 100% or 50%. Just be you, period.
We have a lot of moms that listen to this podcast. Could you talk into that for us briefly to have that conversation with their kiddos?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and this is ultimately like when I went to grad school and did research, this is what I chose to talk about. I was like, how does weight discrimination impact women, like women who have been big their whole lives, like since girlhood, and because for me, I had a lot of gender confusion as a kid, because like I was told that I was a girl, and there was, I had some of the signifiers, right? Like my parents had my hair long, they would put like little lipstick on me sometimes or whatever, there were those kind of signifiers, but outside of
Virgie is obviously very feminine. Like, I'm just gonna say that. She reads as very, very feminine to me. Extremely so.
Outside of those signifiers, I didn't have any social signifiers that were affirming my gender. So let me get more specific, right? So like I could not shop at the girls department, and I'm like, wait, so if I'm not shopping in the girls department because nothing fits, then am I a girl? Then I was watching, certainly I was getting bullied, which and the bullying was very, very focused on my gender. It was very, yes, it was about my fatness, but it was specifically about being a fat girl.
Yes.
And the problem was that I didn't look the way that a wife is supposed to look or a girlfriend is supposed to look. And the boys at my school felt that was a punishable offense. So it's so connected to my gender. So anyway,
bullying is horrible in general. Gosh, bullying is a whole other topic, but, especially if it's sustained, deep, etc., goes on for a long time, it's definitely damaging, for sure. Definitely. So, I'm sorry about that, Virgie.
And then so the bullying is there, and the bullying has this sort of, right, like I'm watching on movies.
Yeah, I would say especially for a girl too. Although girls can be bullies too, but that's it's kind of like, I don't know. It doesn't sit right with me, I guess, that Virgie was totally horrifically bullied. I mean, I don't think it's good for any kid to be bullied, really. Anyways, but it's like kind of like, it's that kind of thing where it's like, especially a little girl, it's like, ooh, that's like really bad. I think with some boys, maybe they don't care, but some boys do care too, I'm not saying that it's totally gendered, but it's just like, I guess I feel like it should have been more obvious, So maybe she felt she wasn't as taken care of because of her size, that kind of thing, which I don't know. Maybe that's true or maybe it isn't. I don't know. That kind of stuff I don't know, because when we look back at like our childhoods and stuff, we have to be kind of careful sometimes to not to make sure that we're looking at it clearly, if that makes any sense. You can look at it kind of muddied. So it's like, an example of that would be if she were to be exaggerating the bullying. I'm not saying she is. I don't know, but I'm just saying that would be an example of it. It's also like some people suppress things, right? It could go the opposite. What if she's suppressing something even more traumatic that she just doesn't want to talk about, for example, or she's downplaying people will downplay what happened to them as a kid sometimes. So it's like, I don't know. All I know is that kind of bullying, that also does lead to that sort of social striation and obsession with competition and status that she does have. So I believe her. I do. I know a lot of people have views on bullying. I'm not the expert on bullies. I don't know everything about it. But I don't think it's a good thing. I'll say that much. I don't. I'm not one of those. I'm not in favor of it, if that makes any sense. I think a little bit of roasting, a little bit of joking back and forth, or that kind of stuff. Even like with some kids, they like to roughhouse and stuff like that. I don't think that's a big deal, but sustained, targeted, deep, long-standing bullying, I'm sorry. We have to, I think there has to be something done about that, That's just my stance. Again, you can take that for what it is. I'm not an expert on that whatsoever. I don't know about that 100%, but those are just my thoughts on it. And I do believe she was. I believe her because I can see kind of some of those psychological scars there. But also, like I said, in her case, they are also physiological too. So sometimes I wonder too if obesity keeps us locked in our trauma. That's a thought that I've had about it, because I feel like the rigidity, it keeps you frozen in time in a lot of ways. And it's just so difficult because I found I don't know if that's just psychological recovery or whatever. It could be something, but it's just an idea I've had because as I've lost weight and stuff, it's easier for me to move on from the past than it used to be. But some of that could be age, some of that could be health. I mean, I don't know. But again, she's older than me, So I don't think it's age. And maybe it's a choice. I will always say we have to forgive as we lose weight. And that might be something that I've just had to put into practice. It's a part of a spiritual practice, is forgiveness, as I've gone through this transformation. But I would 100%, I would 100% support it or advocate to actively forgive things as you lose weight, because you just, and in general, honestly, but you want the hurting to stop. You have to get to that point. And so you let it go so that it doesn't hurt you anymore. It's not about what they did doesn't matter or what they did wasn't wrong. No, it was, it was wrong. But it's more so we still deserve to live a happy life. And we still, despite what has happened to us, to the best of our ability, and we still deserve to have good relationships with new connections and old connections and, and things like that. So I don't know, all of this stuff, it gets combined. It's difficult to separate sometimes the spiritual from the physical, from the psychological, it's all kind of a lot. But yeah, I do wonder if obesity keeps, or maybe that's the toxic ritualistic side, it keeps us attached to trauma as a form of hurting yourself. So you try to keep it fresh. That's probably what that is. You try to keep it fresh in your mind, especially if it has to do with your physical form, so that you can continue to push that button whenever you feel like it, so that you'll hurt. And I think that coping mechanism, it can carry to other areas of life really easily. I think I figured it out as I talked about it. So I think that's a toxic ritualistic thing. Because we have to remember which I'm sorry if this is complicated and jumbled, we have to remember that toxic ritualistic mindsets are a coping mechanism. And as a coping mechanism, it's a form of SH. It's a form of causing harm to, you know, you have to kind of spread it out of it yourself, you know? So you hold on to the trauma so you can push the button and feel hurt. And as you get older, you get more and more traumatic things that happen. So you have more to choose from. It's like a, you know, it's a horrible coping mechanism, you guys. It's horrible. But it's probably not the obesity. It's probably the E followed by the letter D. So I got my things mixed up. You see how hard it can be to separate them? I'm trying. I'm going to have to work with somebody to definitely write a book about all this, because it needs to be like put in. I know I'm planning on working with Lisa, and I know if she watches this, she's going to be like, I told you need to do a book. She's probably right, and I don't want to at all. But this type of stuff does need to be mapped out and stuff, because it's really complicated and it needs to be like written out better. But anyways, you can see the book cooking in my brain. I hate saying that. I hate it. I do not want to do a book. Oh my gosh, it makes me want to die. I don't think I'm going to write it, but I will just work with somebody for it to be written. But yeah, this stuff has to be talked about, because it can be really hard to separate all these different factors. I feel like my brain, I feel like I need a chart where I just like write it down and it's like, okay, this is this is that, you know, because it's hard. And when they all combine, it's just a nightmare. And she is I keep saying it, she is a perfect marriage of all of it in one person. And I think that that's why she is so particularly grating to people, to a lot of people. She really bothers them. And I think it's because she has so many problems. There's so much with her and this issue. And I can still kind of understand it, because I've been in the midst of just this complete shitstorm of interactions of trauma, toxic ritualistic, hypothyroidism, you know, the actual social dynamics of supermorbid obesity, like all of it. It's just a nightmare. It's a nightmare situation. And, but you are able to get out, you know. It's just one step at a time. It's like cleaning the house. You clean one part a day until it's done. That's how it is. You know, we have to stop thinking about this in terms of like a Biggest Loser expectation. Think about it like a metronome. You know, this is so weird, but this helped me when I was super morbidly obese. So I'm going to tell you guys. It is an astrological concept, which again, just so you guys know, astrology is not a religion. It's just a tool, so it has nothing to do with religion or anything like that. But anyways, something I learned about it, and a concept that was taught to me, is that it was like around the time of Saturn in Aquarius, and it was the video that I watched, it was talking about how Aquarius is a changing sign, but Saturn used to rule it, which this is all like complicated. If you get it, you get it. If you don't, just hear me out. Because Aquarius is a fixed sign, but it's also a transformative sign, the person I was listening to was describing why. And it's because the concept of change, which Aquarius rules that kind of change, like a forward-moving change. In order to change something, you have to repeat it over and over again. right? Like a metronome. So in order to, let's say you want to change your sleep schedule, every single morning you have to get up at the same time to change your sleep schedule. If you go on if you fly in another country and you come back and you have jet lag, you have to set an alarm and get up at that time every single day. And as that metronome hits, boom, 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 that changes. It's the same thing with weight loss. It's the same thing with toxic ritualistic. It's the same thing. You have to hit it every single day like a metronome, like tick, tock, tick, tock. And it can be very tedious, but that's actually how you get out of it, is tick, tock, like that. So you just take the action every day, almost like a machine, and you get out. But there's no emotion there, you know? So I know that was kind of a weird esoteric concept, but it helped me to understand. And I think that's how it is with the EFA by the letter D too. You just stop these things and you take those habits. So if you see yourself starting to stare at the mirror, you don't allow it. You stop it like that metronome. You know, if you're having a weird moment with your diet or whatever, you break the rule to kind of like stop that. You know, you don't have to eat the whole thing in one sitting. You don't. Just stop. Just have some of what you're going to have and count it as normal, and then go on with your day. Count it in your calories and move on. You stop with that kind of stuff. So I know it's hard. It is. But it's also, if you take that metronome approach with these things, especially super morbid obesity, that metronome, hit it every single day at the same time, like that. Do, 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 do. Like a rhythm, you will get out. That's how I got out. That's what I say when I talk about it. Like a whole ass Eras tour. It's like Taylor got on the stage and she did the tour every night, you know, that she did it tons and tons of times. But she would do it and she'd take every step and do it in a calculated move every night pretty much with very little deviation. That's how you get out. That's what it would take for Virgie to get out. But you see how you can't have these rash emotional reactions to everything all the time and actually execute that. So you have to get control over your emotions. You have to be able to compartmentalize to get out of this for your survival. And for a lot of us that are extremely emotional, that is really difficult. But you have to develop that as a skill. So anyways, you guys, I'm going to go ahead and leave it there. I know this is kind of esoteric and a little weird, but I hope you guys understood it. I will probably try to explain some of these concepts better in January. And I'll probably begrudgingly be a part of a book in the future where it's more mapped out and organized, because I know it needs to be. But this is where we're at. But thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you guys again Thursday, and then next week will be normal. So have a good rest of your day, night, etc. Merry Christmas. Hope you guys have a wonderful week, and I'll see you Thursday. Bye.